I'm good.
Ready to rock?
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Nope.
I can throw this away now.
That's doors there. This way. Thanks very much for doing this. And like we were saying earlier, the route is up to you completely. But if you want to take us to places where things have happened,
Okay, sure. Absolutely.
and then if you could point stuff out, but if you could sort of just, it helps me later, say like the building to the left or the green building.
Sure.
Just so I can then pick it out the video.
Could have got a bigger car.
Plenty of room, you don't have to be that far forward.
Well, it's just to get my hands. I have this vest, so when I have to push my arms forward, the vest kind of restricts me from.
Is that bulletproof or just knife proof?
No, it's bulletproof. I have two plates in the front, and they're side panels, so they're not the most comfortable. But I'm on the SWAT team, so it's way more comfortable than those vests. All right. Well, if you're not familiar with Ravenna, we do have a heroin epidemic that is a still rising problem, and there are several locations that are known for trafficking. We have a lot of transient people here. I think a lot of it serves because we are the county seat, which means all of the counties, I don't want to say issues or maybe concerns come to Ravenna because they're going to court. They go to jail. You have the hospital here. You have your social services here. So a lot of the county's stuff is coming into Ravenna. So it's kind of centralized is the point I'm getting at.
Serves as a hub for different services.
Exactly. So, and I mean, let's face it, you go to court because you probably have some issues with the criminal justice system. You have the jail, which they have people that are always coming in and out. And like I said, Ravenna's centralized. If you look on the map, I mean, we're right next door to Akron. You're down the road from Warren, Youngstown, Cleveland south of us. These are all kind of source cities for heroin and other narcotics that are coming through here. A lot of the problem too that we see here in my 10 years being involved is we have a lot of mental health patients that reside here and sometimes don't make the best decisions because they can't, and people prey on that. So right here is the Den Lounge. You'll see we've had several issues over the years, particularly with drug trafficking, prostitution.
Does it all take place inside or outside as well?
Typically it does take place inside. We have had a few shootings there.
Is it open in the evenings, sir?
Yeah, typically it's open in the evenings. A lot of times, I'll take you around so you can see again. The bathrooms serve as places where people can do, exchanges for narcotics, typically heroin that we see now, or crystal meth.
So if somebody buys drugs there, where would they then use them?
It just depends. I mean, they could use it in the bathroom. A drug transaction could be very quick. I mean, and they can walk out, and you're in the downtown area here. You can do it in a vehicle. We have a lot of apartments here where they can walk within walking distance and do it. But this is a source where a lot of heroin has been rumored to happen.
Has the bar changed ownership, or has it been the same people?
No, it's been the same owner. I started in the beginning of 2008, and the drugs out here were marijuana, crack cocaine, soft cocaine, and a couple years went by, and the painkillers started rising out here. Oxycontin. It was readily accessible for people to get Oxycontin out here, and then that seemed to have dried up, and the meth manufacturing started happening out here. The one-pot labs, where they call them the shake and bake, typically, where they take the bottles and they can take certain components and make methamphetamine. We were starting to see the labs rise, and then that started
We're
to
starting to find some of the containers.
Yeah, we were starting to find some of the containers. The drug unit guys were starting to run into it more. It was becoming more prevalent. We were actually having meth labs blowing up, not on a very consistent basis, but every once in a while, the pots or the bottles would deform and combust and cause small fires and explosions and stuff like that. That dried up, and typically before you knew it, heroin is cheap. The Oxycontin was drying up because I think they started really hammering on that on both ends, DEA on the federal level, and they started getting it on the local level, and that started drying up, and heroin was cheap out here. That started to rise. We've been dealing with heroin on a consistent basis off the top of my head for a good 5 years. We actually had a shift a couple years ago where we had 7 overdoses in an 8-hour shift in just Ravenna City.
So is that black tar heroin, or is it sort of more doctor-based?
Typically, you'll see it in a light brown substance, maybe even light, like a chalky powder. You don't typically see black tar on the street level out here. The problem with the heroin is the fentanyl.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That is what's getting everybody. And, I've talked to several people, and they want it. They want it in their product. They want that fentanyl.
Because it gives them a greater high.
Right, exactly. The problem is it's extremely dangerous.
Right.
This is a well documented in our system drug area. We've had several overdoses
On the
throughout.
left here.
Yes, several overdoses in these 2 buildings over the years. Heroin, typically. It is not uncommon for people to call in and say they find heroin needles and stuff along the sidewalk or in the alleys, in the yard. One of the problems we have here is we have small children that play here. The public library is also right here, catty corner. Like I said, a lot of this is older folks or maybe mental health patients that are residing here, and we will get gang members that will actually come in at times and set up shop there, or they'll, it's like I said, a drug transaction is very simple. It's easy. They come in, walk out. Next thing you know, these people are
431.
ingesting heroin,
Go ahead.
and they have fentanyl, and then you'll have your overdose.
Stay with me on 25, please.
The other problem, like I said, is you'll have needles, drug paraphernalia, stuff like that you'll commonly find around this area here.
Do people report it? I mean, if they see...
Typically, yes, they'll report it. But throughout all these units, we have had heroin overdoses over the years. We have done a very good job here of suppressing that, being proactive.
Do you ever work with the landlords to try and...
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you have to do that, and especially a small town like this where there's stuff going on, and you have to work with the landlords because they're going to be your eyes and ears. They're a very effective tool in helping enforce like trespassing and stuff like that. Trespassing is not the biggest crime in the world, but if you can enforce it, it is certainly a deterrent for bigger things like overdoses narcotics trafficking, such. So, just right here, a couple years ago, there is apartments, I'll show you, right above the bakery where we have had overdoses.
That'll be on the left.
That'll be on the left, correct. You would be amazed too at the downtown area how much you see here, vehicles, business, a lot of, you can see, you'll have drug trafficking, bus stops, this Caritas Cafe, they will oftentimes have people standing around there, and a lot of it goes on there. Not so much overdoses, but what's leading up to it is the exchanges, the trafficking part. So right there where that door's open in the stairwell, we've had overdoses right there. It's low-income housing, Section 8, for lack of a better term, often leads to overdoses in my experience.
How different is this area at night?
It just depends. I mean, if you got the bars going, not to slam the bars or anything like that, but it definitely brings in a different clientele, I mean, people are coming in to have a good time, and sometimes doing narcotics is part of their good time, their evening, The traffic typically dies out around 11:30, 12 o'clock in the evening, and where it's really busy from now till the evening hours.
Do you see most of your overdoses at night, or are they just all through the day, anytime?
It just depends with the load, the product that comes in. You're going to have a load that comes in. It's going to have whatever that's going to cause the overdose. I'm going to point out fentanyl. So you get a load of heroin that comes in. It's pretty much well documented that heroin's coming in from the southern border of the United States. That's where the majority of the heroin's coming in. You got your fentanyl, and then they'll cut it up. They'll divide it up. They'll start trafficking it out, and then you will usually get spurts of overdoses. You usually don't get one isolated overdose. So you could have 2 right now, 3 in the evening, and one more, at 3 in the morning. So it's all coming from the same product. Because like I said, this is a small town, so typically you're only going to have a handful of dealers. So
basically you're saying that when you see a spike in overdoses, that usually means that there was a fresh batch or a new batch of drugs that just came into the area.
Correct. Typically coming from the same source because it's a small area.
Do you have any canary communities at other places where if they suddenly see overdoses, you've got a sense that in the daytime you're going to get them as well?
What was your question again?
So do you have any other communities around, maybe like Akron, if they start to see overdoses, you're going to be next?
Typically Kent and Ravenna are kind of like the twins.
Yeah.
So if, Kent starts having a spike in overdoses, or Streetsboro or Ravenna Township, and you start hearing that, then you probably can expect, you're going to have the same thing here. The reason I pull in McDonald's here, the bathroom is very common for heroin overdoses in this area. We started seeing places where homes will get them at homes, but public bathrooms, we have them all the time, public bathrooms. I mean, I can't tell you how many times we've responded to this address for somebody laying down in the bathroom almost dead because of heroin. So we know this because we Narcan them back.
Yeah.
So
that might be a good example of, when we start looking at the data, to approach it from the point of maybe we need to get some Narcan kits out to some of these businesses.
Could potentially. The other thing, like I was trying to point out, is, there's a lot of transient traffic. So, I want to, they walk in, come into a business like this, and it's hard to, pin them down to like a specific location.
efforts to try and identify how the drugs are getting into Ravenna or
Oh yeah,
Streetsboro?
yeah, and that would be something that you could probably.
Is it coming in off of Route 5?
Oh,
is it coming in off of?
Just
I know
depends.
we have
It could come in off of
heavy
Route
rail
5.
or-
It could come off the Ohio Turnpike. It could
Yeah.
come off of 14. Certainly, it's probably going to come through State Route 59, 76. That's another unique thing about Ravenna is you have all these major routes going through and
Right.
around Ravenna. Compound that with, like I was telling you, you have majority of the Section 8 housing, low-income housing, on top of the mental health, and it being the county seat where, everything and everybody are coming in here. And it's a lot going on. So these are some things that I've seen in my 11-year career that, typically drug dealers,
I don't know if
they
you know
they target.
I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, but if the drugs are coming, say, from the south, do you know do they come directly here, or do they go first to Akron and then they are spread out from Akron? Or
Typically, they're going to make their way to Chicago or Detroit first, and then from those places, they're going to go out. So you can just about bet off the top of my head, without any numbers or statistics, once they get to like Detroit, they're going to come down to Toledo. Toledo's going to go to Cleveland, Columbus, Youngstown, and it's just going to filter on down into Akron, Warren.
And each one of these places probably has got a drug node person in charge who then spreads it out to the next level.
Probably, typically yes. The heroin has increased the influx in our gang activity. Portage County is not typically known for gangs. We've had an influx in certain gangs like the Heartless Felons, which originated in the DYS system in Ohio. We have a lot of documented Heartless Felons that come out of Akron and Cleveland.
That's just the name of their gang.
That's the name of their gang.
Is that a biker gang?
No, they are typically like I said, the juvenile prison system in Ohio is where they originated. And now they've spanned into the regular penitentiaries, and the first wave of them are adults, and they have their hand in some of the heroin trafficking here. I have been around the biker scene for years. To my knowledge, they have not dabbled in heroin trafficking very much. So if there was to credit a specific group, Heartless Felons would certainly be involved. This house right here, we've had several overdoses.
On the right there.
Yeah, nearly fatal, particularly in the garage. We've had gang members in there. We've had everything under the sun in there. Burglaries, thefts, weapons violations.
Is it a vacant house?
No, it's occupied, believe it or not.
But it's a rental.
The lady actually owns it, and her son and other associates literally walked in the garage and bodies laying there with heroin paraphernalia there. This is a place called Terrell Commons. It is all PMHA, which is state federal funding for housing. Over the years, we've had heroin trafficking out of here, heroin use, overdoses, and all kinds of criminal activity leading up to homicide.
You talked about homicide. I mean, how much violence is there around drug distribution here?
It has spiked tremendously since the heroin has come in here and been on a consistent basis. It's not really uncommon for us to see a shooting, a stabbing, a violent assault, robbery. Weapons have increased in Ravenna.
And what would you say is the major cause for that? Is it people fighting for turf?
It just depends. It could be fighting for turf. It could be money owed, debt incurred, feeding a habit. I mean, if you actually talk to a heroin addict, which, if we get the opportunity you want, we can try to talk to somebody, and they will pretty much tell you that they're going to get sick, and they got to have it. And they're going to get real sick. They're going to throw up, diarrhea, dehydrate, and they literally feel like they're living in hell. Well, and they're not bashful about telling you they got to have it. It's important for us as law enforcement to make contacts with the community. That's been how I've found out to effectively combat this. You have to have people be able to talk to you, such as somebody that is addicted to heroin, because they have a problem, and most of them tell you that they don't want to be on it. They don't enjoy it. They got to have it. It's such an addicting drug. And they're going to give you the information where to go to, where they get it.
So if you come across somebody who is that way, what are the services available to them in Ravenna to help them get off drugs?
I think it's probably limited, for what they really need. The court system is really trying to come up with like a drug court or mental health court for them. They will typically send them over to NeoCap, which is a place to have them rehab. The problem that I've seen on my end of law enforcement in the time I've worked is that they will get clean, and then they will come back into this environment. The same connections they had, the addiction in their mind, and some of the things, that they start using drugs for, because they're down on life, come back, and that's why it's starting to say, your low-income housing, your mental health, where they have these issues, is typically where you see the heroin use out here, in my experience. This is the McElworth allotment. Back in the day, they used to call it the Proctor allotment. You don't hear that too often anymore. This has always been a hub where drug trafficking happens. Somebody like me, I'm in a blue unmarked car. These people know me. I'm up here every day. I try to establish a relationship with them as much as I can, because community policing is one of the most effective ways to try and combat this.
You had mentioned about assistance. Usually the only detox that we have in Portage is when they go to jail.
Absolutely.
So they detox in jail.
And it's a county jail, which typically doesn't house them for a very long period of time.
But they get somewhat detoxed in there, and then they get out, and they, in their mind, they're looking for their next dose of heroin, and they're thinking in their mind they do the same dose. And now that they detox, they do that same amount, and it almost is a fatal dose for them.
Correct.
Because their tolerance has gone down.
I've heard that in numerous places. And even over a weekend, you've got somebody who's a real heavy user. If they're just arrested over the weekend, they come out and they'll overdose on Monday morning. The tolerance is put there.
Now, we're actually not in Ravenna City right now. We're in Ravenna Township, which is outside of our jurisdiction. But we work so much in this area with the sheriff's office. It goes back and forth. A lot of it has to do with the criminal activity, the narcotics trafficking. This location right here has been rumored for a lot of narcotics trafficking. The specific area, without getting into too much about it, because we still have a pending case. We had a multiple homicide in this area. So the violent crime is up.
So obviously you come out here a lot, you're the police, and therefore you feel somewhat secure. Any of the areas we've been to, if we were just going through them, would we feel more worried?
You'd actually be surprised. I would always caution people like myself. I'm a police officer, and I look at myself that I can handle myself pretty well, but you never know. I don't think that it's to where they're gonna, if you're rolling down the street, they're gonna stop in front of you rob you, mug you, and steal your car. I think it's more of, a lot of it has to do with our heroin trafficking and use, where, you have a dealer. Most of the time you see where they get violent is usually if they are ripped off, or if they feel shorted on anything, or they want to have control of their users. Or the user is sick and they need some type of money or income to support their habit. And you'll see anything from, simple theft to burglary to robbery up to homicide. We actually had this case is actually solved, and we have a conviction back in, off the top of my head, 2012. We had a documented heroin addict that made entry into his mother's house, ended up beating her with a weight and strangling her to death with an extension cord. Go back to those reports, a lot of it was, we feel, because of his heroin addiction. So what stemmed from that is the mother didn't want him around the young nephew, and that angered him and led up to what he did. So you'll have basically those crimes is what you see with somebody that's on heroin, and paraphernalia stuff too. I mean, we are very cognizant anymore of searching people, where we just go diving into we have probable cause or reasonable suspicion to go diving into their pockets. Like that guy right there, he's got cargo pockets and stuff. Common places for needles, you typically have uncapped needles. I've had them at times where they're actually facing up. So we're not doing the diving into people's pockets anymore. Typically what I'm teaching young guys as a training officer is start patting on the exterior with gloves, maybe even have them empty their pockets after that point if you don't immediately feel like a weapon or anything like that, and then start shaking their clothing to see if anything will fall loose, because it is dangerous for us as law enforcement. It is becoming increasingly more dangerous health-wise for us to go in and search people for paraphernalia, because hepatitis is coming in. We're seeing a lot of hepatitis. Just being stabbed with a needle in itself is dangerous. The fentanyl, the car fentanyl, where you're starting to see documentation where officers are getting it absorbed in their skin and they're overdosing. It's becoming increasingly dangerous for us. I foresee probably some type of formal training from the state coming in the near future, because you're starting to see an increase in danger towards the officers with stuff like that. So, if it's not already in the works.
Do you think, the data could potentially show this, but do you think you get a lot of other crimes around the known hotspots? So if there was an apartment complex where you have overdoses, do you think you see a lot of robberies around there because people are trying to find extra money? Or
Sure, absolutely. You got to think too. Heroin, any type of narcotic addiction is going to make you probably alter your thinking. So, typically what we see is, like I said, you see thefts, you see more assaults, people become irritable, throughout the day. So they'll start, your disorderly conducts will go up. Burglary. It's not an uncommon thing. Like this guy's garage is open right here. It's not an uncommon thing to have somebody walking around the corner and walk in, steal a chainsaw, and walk back out in the middle of the day. You didn't used to have that around here. This is a quiet town, a lot of blue-collar working people, and unfortunately we see that now. I'm going to go back to that house. We had a robbery, a strong-arm robbery, and it was actually my investigation. And when I talked to the victim of the robbery had stemmed from the dealer actually owed the dealer money for heroin, and he had openly admitted that on tape, and we caught the actual robbery on video. Somebody had videoed it on their phone and put it on Facebook. So, but it was right there on that corner there, and in the middle of the day, broad daylight, chased him all the way down the sidewalk and started beating him and stealing his money. It was probably a similar day like this. So actually have the video of the robbery and the audio of it too. So unfortunately, that does happen out here.
Is there one particular age group that seems to overdose more, or is it across all the age groups?
You know, the scary thing is you see it in the 20s, the 30s, the 40s. What's scary is you're starting to see it go lower than the 20s. Yeah. That's what's the scary part. You know, typically, from what I've seen, off the top of my head without statistics, is it's kind of leveling off at the 50s. You know, you don't really see 50 to 80 really dabbling around in heroin.
So with it going younger, is that being dealt in schools now, around schools, or?
It has been rumored. I don't have any documentation, I'm sure, you know, but it has been rumored that there has been trafficking of that around. So I would not be at all shocked. And there may be cases, you know. I mean, it's scary because it's hitting the younger ages.
Is there the rule here? I know in Akron it's within a certain distance of a school. If you're found with drugs or dealing, then the sentence is doubled. Or...
If convicted, correct. Yeah, the charges actually go up if they can get you trafficking within so many feet of a school. Then it elevates. You know, the problem we're seeing in Ohio is the jail system is filling up because of this. You know, in Portage County alone, the female population in the jail has increased to the point where they're actually over capacity, and they've credited it to heroin use, which has created a financial problem for the county, which trickles down to all of us, because when you go in to try to arrest somebody and the jail's full, they only accept certain crimes, you know, domestic violence, felonies at times, and you're dealing with people that have an addiction problem, or you're recovering paraphernalia and stuff, and it's extremely hard to incarcerate, you know. So at times we're often cutting them loose with a summons because our resources are limited. And you can see the heroin epidemic is causing a strain financially on city, county, state, federal resources, and obviously you need those to operate. So it is a difficult thing to combat.
So from your experience, you've obviously talked to a lot of people who use.
Mm-hmm.
What's the pathway to using? I mean, what are the things that you've heard?
You know, they always say marijuana was a gateway drug. I've been around long enough to see some of these young kids grow up now. From what I can see, a lot of times is one is the lack of guidance for an adult, you know, for a young kid. If they don't have that guidance in their life, whether it's coming from school or a coach or a parent or something like that, then they often resort to being out here. You know, they often resort to being out in the streets. And, you know, when you have a young, impressionable person and you have what I've told you is kind of lurking around out here, they're going to pick them up real quick. And then they're going to identify with that. Because everybody wants to be a part of something, you know, and then you start seeing them dabble in, you know, marijuana or alcohol or, you know, cigarette use, something like that, something small that starts like that. And the next thing you know, they want to fit in, they want to adapt. So they're trying other stuff because, you know, these older people are encouraging them to do that, and they don't have anybody to guide them or counter any of that. And that's how I see it starting. You know, you don't see too much anymore where we still have marijuana. You don't see too much, you know, soft powdered cocaine use anymore. Very rarely do you see crack cocaine. a lot of your old timers, in their 50s or 60s that were in the 1980s and the 70s and the 90s where they were using crack cocaine. That was their drug. That's the only time you really see that anymore. So they're kind of jumping from marijuana and alcohol to, crystal meth to heroin. So
You still see a lot of meth? Is that
crystal meth, yes. We don't see the labs like we used to. Again, the influx in crystal meth came from the West Coast and the South, Mexico, and has made its way up into the Midwest, where it's not really advantageous for anybody to try and cook meth. The penalties are way harsher for manufacturing, and the high's not as good as what they're getting from the crystal meth. They get crystal meth where somebody that's really good is cooking it and they're buying it, and where before you have somebody that has no idea how to make meth and they're trying to shop around for pseudoephedrine and all these products and stuff, and it's harder because they've came down on how much pseudoephedrine you can buy. And we've had people that have went from Ravenna all the way down to West Virginia to try and get 9 grams of pseudoephedrine to cook 1 bottle of meth. So, or you could go and buy a sack of crystal meth and smoke it and be 3 times higher than what you were, so, and not have anywhere near the penalties as if you got caught from manufacturing. If you have 3 components, if we're in this car right now and we have 3 components, documented components for manufacturing methamphetamine, that's a felony of the 3rd degree, and if you get convicted, that's a mandatory prison term. Or you could just go buy crystal meth and get 3 times the high. It doesn't make sense.
So again, from your experience, what can be done to... You say there's an epidemic of overdoses now. You're starting to see a lot, so there has been a rise.
Mm-hmm.
What can be done to try and limit that?
It's going to be a group effort. It's going to have to take everybody. It's going to have to take the health system. It's going to have to take law enforcement. It's going to have to take the court system. Funding the community. In order to do this, I think there's going to have to be harsher penalties down on dealers. Like I said, it's coming up through the South, in from Mexico and whatnot. I don't have a specific answer. I know that in a small community like this, being as proactive as possible and being, community oriented is how we kind of deter it. I don't think we'll ever solve it. I think we'll deter it.
So if I'm right in interpreting what you said, in downtown Ravenna, to some degree, it's a bit like whack-a-mole.
It is.
Because, you've got a certain population that's always going to be using, irrespective of what you do.
Right. Well,
least one corner will go to another.
I keep reiterating, I've been in this 11 years. My dad was the county sheriff. He did it 40 years. He actually was the director of the drug unit. And the thing I've seen from the time that I've been young out in this community to the time now is narcotics is like punching water. It's like, it literally is like punching water. And it seems to be that way. And I'm comfortable saying this to you, is look at the last 30 years in the United States with, just communities in general trying to combat illegal narcotics. I don't see how we're winning the war on drugs. I really don't. I hope we do, but I don't see it. You're seeing harder narcotics coming in. You're seeing more severe stuff happening to people, overdoses, deaths, stuff like that. And that's my opinion of it.
So you've identified that one group that could potentially be help to the youth. Stop them early on.
Absolutely. I think it goes back to, you have young children that are impressionable. They are going to want to identify with something, whether it's a sport, whether it's church, whether it's gang. They want to identify. They want to be a part of something. So, I think it does start with the youth. I mean, if you get in there, I think one thing we are doing, on a side note, we have had overdoses here, documented overdoses. This is a residence, it's residential area here, but we've had several overdoses in this place too.
501.
I believe that's vacant at this point. I'm not specifically sure.
Something that I've found in other locations is that certain buildings, certain rentals they almost like have a history in terms of it's different people that rent it, but they always seem to be overdosing. You find the same thing here?
Absolutely, and I think that goes back to the low-income housing, where you have these people that have these specific problems, and they are trying to find things to, get a release from that. And heroin, unfortunately, is one of those things where, it's kind of giving them their release from their problems. Unfortunately, it's life-threatening, and when you get off that high, you're going to go back to your same old problems.
So location-wise, we're close to Skills.
Yeah, I'll take you down to Skills just to show you. Skills over the years has become very quiet. Credit to the sheriff's office years ago for really fighting the activity in there, the illegal activity. Yes, we are very close to Skills. There's a apartment complex down here called Renaissance Place. Low income narcotics activity.
To what degree do you think this may be middle-aged people who get onto, especially opioids, because they've lost their job, they're depressed, their poverty hits? They weren't typically drug users.
Right. You just hit the nail on the head. Job loss, family problems. Depression sits in. So, now again, we're outside of the city, but there's so much. You can see how close it is that we're down here as much as the sheriff's office. And it's unique because we actually work so much together on a daily basis that, we're always in the township and they're always in the city. So a lot of these places have had overdoses, narcotics trafficking, so on and so forth.
Is it mixed race here?
Yes. Most of Ravenna is white and black. It's predominantly the main races in the city and in the township.
I know from our agency, just the comparison between this development and McElrath. This one is so much because we get a lot of open dumping complaints from McElrath.
Yeah, right.
So there's a lot. McElrath still hasn't been pseudo-revitalized like this community has. There's been more of a community response in here, and the people that are living in this Skills area are more grateful for keeping things up and keeping it nice.
What's up? Staying out of trouble?
Yeah.
You
Is it your car?
I'm driving around in it. You behaving?
Yeah.
Play football now.
Yeah. Are you?
Uh-huh.
What, for Ravenna?
Yep.
Yeah.
These cameras,
Yeah?
Yep. They're special ones with maps in.
hey, them cameras dope.
Yeah.
Do like the front of it like turn?
It does, yeah. So you see there's 0 at the top. That means it's looking that way. But if you put it on a skateboard, you could turn it to the side and turn it.
On a skateboard.
A
Can I
skateboard,
get one?
surfboard.
If you behave, maybe I'll start, stay out of trouble.
Yeah, I'm about to have me one. of my
What position you playing?
I
Yeah.
play wide receiver.
What about you, Lorenzo?
I play safety and wide receiver.
Yeah? You guys ready to go back to school? No? You on probation? Yeah. How'd that work out? You guys just got probation?
Yeah.
Alright. I'm gonna be looking out for you guys. I don't want to catch you doing no bad stuff no more, alright? I'm gonna keep track of the football. Alright? Alright. Has it been quiet down here? Yeah? Alright. You guys be good, alright? I'll see you later.
Serious again.
Yeah. Well, those two had been breaking into vehicles in the middle of the day. I actually caught them. They were stealing bikes and stuff too. But, they're very young. Low-income housing. Their grandmother is actually trying to work a job and raise them. And she's struggling.
So while she's working, they don't have any parent
Guidance
around.
at all, which
Right.
is the point I'm trying to make here is
That's
they're
half
out in the middle
battle.
of the day breaking into stuff.
Mhm.
The next thing you know, they're going to be identifying themselves with somebody that probably they shouldn't be. And, I arrested them, charged them, and still have the ability to pull up to them and be their friend and kind of, they're in football. Okay, they've identified with something.
Right.
Follow up with them.
They
Make
seem
sure they're
pretty
doing.
nice kids.
They are nice kids. They're just young kids, and that's
Very
how
impressionable.
right? Very impressionable. That's my point to all this. Is that one of the ways you get to combat this is you identify, you build a rapport, and then you can start to follow through and check up on them, sit there and guide them. I mean, as little as I am in their life, if I check up on, they live right there. If I check up on them and kind of keep steering them that way, who knows? Maybe they will stay away from it. I mean, we have had cases where kids have started out bad and they turned it around.
Mhm.
So, but that's what I'm saying is it's going to takes a community effort. I mean, it can't be just one or two sources like law enforcement or criminal justice. It has to be everybody.
You both mentioned skis.
Skills.
This is the skills allotment.
What is it? SKEELS.
Correct. Low-income housing. Back in the 1970s and 80s, it was predominantly African American. That's changed quite a bit. It's quiet down here now. There's homicides, shootings, stabbings, bars, after-hours clubs. It was kind of the Wild West.
But you find a lot more community engagement here than in McElrath. Because
Right.
we don't, for us, our solid waste complaints are dramatically different.
Mhm.
We still have a lot of open dumping over in McElrath, and it seems like that's a place where people go to dump stuff. And they know, people in the communities know, they just go in and dump stuff because no one's monitoring it. And it used to be like that here, but the neighborhood has cleaned that up. And people watch out for the properties here. So it's a little more vigilant with the people that live in this community versus McElrath,
Right.
from our perspective.
Right, I agree with you. Some of it too here is this is the North Coast Biker Gangs Clubhouse. They're not going to put up with it because they don't want the attention. They
And you
are,
saw how nice and neat their property is maintained.
right. They are underlings of the Hells Angels out of Akron, and they are not going to want that attention because ultimately they're organized crime. They're not going to want it, the riffraff running around.
lot of meals for the community to try and feed the community, and they really try and take care of their own in this little pocket here. I think McElrath's trying to get to that point, but they just haven't gotten that far. Because I know I've been invited over, and we've done some Project Dawn classes here over in this community center, and we've done some over at McElrath too. But it's certainly more attended here, and you could see there's more of a community interest here than in McElrath.
Right. The shootings over in McElrath, the piggyback, have increased over the last year. The community center there, we've actually had a shooting in broad daylight underneath the pavilion there. So that's another thing, is you're starting to see these groups that, I mean, they're not really bashful about what they're doing. They're being more and more violent in the middle of the day.
How many square miles you patrol?
I
Is it
think
around 5?
something like that, 5 or 6, which is amazing, because you sit there and think, how could it just be 5 or 6 square miles when you're dealing with all this?
Yeah.
Right here on the right, there is apartments. We've had heroin issues here, and that's low income. And kind of to proportionalize, so I just said there was some heroin issues there. Come around the corner. Known heroin trafficking and gang member in this brown house. So you can see kind of how close it is.
Vin, 1 Charles, 4 George Tom.
Now this is a neighborhood. I'll show you something. So,
Lincoln,
okay, we have
4.
heroin issues back here. Known heroin trafficker here.
X-ray boy, 80051.
Come up the road. Up here on the right, heroin death last year. Heroin problems at this house. Death at this house for heroin. So you can kind of see already, I've pointed out, 4 houses in one street or 2 streets. You can see how it'll take over a neighborhood pretty quick.
Yeah, which looks like a nice little neighborhood.
I was going to say the same thing. That looks really quite nice along there.
Heroin issues there.
On the right again.
You want to know if you're going straight or turning?
Yeah, we'll go straight.
So do you think that spread because of the one guy living
Can
in
leave,
Brown
it comes
House?
back,
Absolutely.
then not on file.
Him living there on top of the clientele,
Country.
mental health. That one house I just showed you on the corner was mental health. So it's easy to prey on them, I mean, they have their issues they're trying to combat, and they're typically mental health. They are dependent on, prescription drugs. So it's not really a hard thing for them to take drugs, So right here, this is an apartment. Over the years, several heroin problems, shootings, stabbings, robbery. We've had heroin trafficking complaints from this church. Guy was actually selling heroin out of here to kids, because what they do is they try to take community members in that are homeless and stuff, feed them, clothe them. They're really trying to be proactive in helping the less fortunate. heroin dealers capitalizing on that. Wow. That's kind of sad that somebody has the ability, the mentality to walk into a church and sell heroin to kids. So just in this little block here I've showed you, there's quite a bit of activity.
So you mentioned homeless. I mean, is that much of a problem, especially with overdoses?
It's increasing. You know, we don't have a huge influx of homeless, but like I said, Ravenna's county seat, centrally located. We get a lot of transit traffic, so we do typically see homeless people, and they resort to drug usage. This is an apartment complex. This is fresh where heroin, reports of heroin use, drug activity.
This is the prosecutor's office.
Correct. So you can see that that doesn't really bother. You have the prosecutor's
And
office,
you got
the
your
court,
office
and
right
the police department right here.
Yeah,
So I
within a
mean,
block.
but it happens so quick, and
Right.
it actually, you know, the public and the vehicle traffic and stuff camouflage what's going on. Now, I will say this. This is mental health housing for the most part. It's brand new. It's actually not alarmed, but it's the front door is locked and you have to buzz people in. We have had 0 to no problems in that place.
Do you get a lot of help from local businesses? I mean, they...
Oh yeah, absolutely. These businesses, they want the cops out here. They want us out here. They've supported us in a levy. We just hired 4 full-time guys. We're hiring another guy. We've just hired 5 guys in the last few weeks. Our community is behind us. So the actual residents that are working and living here, we have their support. Like I said, this is kind of a difficult thing because we're the county seat, and we get all this stuff. We're the county seat. Take all this housing. Take all these main routes. You know, I mean, and you kind of have a small city with big city problems. So, and the resources are limited. I mean, we have 4 uniformed officers out on patrol today. That's it. So, and there's days where it's quiet as a church mouse, and there's days where, you know, 2 or 3 of us could be taking 25 to 30 calls and arresting people. So,
When was the last time a police officer got hurt in the line of duty?
just in anything like a physical confrontation.
Yeah, you know, sort of either shooting or...
Weeks ago.
Weeks.
Yeah, we are currently 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys down from physical confrontations. They're out on injury right now. We're about a 30-man police department. The last officer that was shot at was 2011. 2 guys were on parole. They robbed the gas station down at 44 and 76. The officer had saw him going eastbound on Route 5, tried to initiate a traffic stop, and they shot at him 19 times. Missed him. They ended up going up into Charleston Township and bailing out and running into the arsenal up there, which launched a manhunt, and ultimately they both were apprehended. So,
CFS for a parking problem
off
break.
the top of my head, I think they're both serving life sentences for attempted murder on a police officer.
The address will be 621 Page
So
Street.
bank robbery, that wasn't even
Maybe
there wasn't any
reference,
shooting or anything.
No, the gun was brandished,
Yeah.
and he ended up barricading himself short time, about a block
One of the
over.
apartments over there or something.
Correct. Mental health patient. The last shooting in Portage County was several months ago in Kent at Silver Meadows. police ended up shooting that guy because he had a hostage. So I was actually a part of that. That was swell. Burger King, another place just on the other side of town. We actually had a heroin death in the bathroom, a female. A little bit about her. Had several children, kind of broke ties with them. They were adult children. Moving back and forth from here to Warren. Several different relationships that weren't panning out. Resorted to heroin. Got it from across the street. I'll show you a house. And had fentanyl in it with the heroin and ended up dying using in the bathroom of here. And I think it was like 9 or 10 o'clock in the evening several months ago.
So in Akron, they have a lot of drug dealing that goes on in the parking lots of grocery stores.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing.
Yeah, we're kind of just an extension of Akron. I mean, we're significantly smaller. A lot of the same issues. A lot of the same gang stuff going on. It's nothing for somebody like me to be in touch with Akron's gang unit on a pretty consistent basis. Our narcotics guys pretty much live in Akron.
It's just interesting. It's all interconnected because in Akron, the neighbourhoods we work in, they said if we had the way we dress, the car we're riding in, people just assume they've come from Kent to store drugs. That's what middle class white guys do when they go to Akron to get the drugs, especially the professor.
Right.
So,
I've got a building.
Right here. Guy's working on his lawn. I got an American
Copy,
flag.
open door. What's the building again?
Several overdoses there. Heroin trafficking out of there.
Doors on the south side.
I can't even tell you how much Narcan we've used in that house.
so is he the
431.
He's the owner of the house. Grandchildren, associates of grandchildren. He just kind of tolerates it. So,
Yeah.
you know, I mean,
So he lets everyone come and go.
pretty much. The female actually visited and had a phone conversation, the one that died in Burger King, about scoring drugs prior to her death in the bathroom of Burger King. So, now I'll show you a little bit about a little different neighborhood here. You're starting to get out on the east end, southeast end of town, where you have more homeowners that are working, and we are very seldom down here for any type of criminal activity or drug usage at all. Kind of give you the dynamic of what my point is you know, you have people low income, no jobs, children that have no, you know, constructive figures in their lives. You know, these are all homeowners. They've lived in the community for decades. They have jobs. They're retired. It's quiet. You don't see the foot traffic, you know, like you do uptown or on the other side of town.
Okay, copy, 1322.
And it's just quiet. It's quiet.
I was actually going to ask you, are there nice areas of Ravenna?
There's pockets.
Yeah.
There's pockets.
Very nice houses here.
You're never down here. I mean, we're down here, you know, patrolling, but we're not down here for criminal stuff. Certainly not drug stuff.
Do the drug users ever come here to rob? Is this just sort of off limits?
No, kind of off limits. Like I said, typically what happens is when you have somebody that's addicted to heroin, they will either do something quick like a gas station robbery where they've hung out and they've kind of gotten to know somebody in there, they feel comfortable, or if they're visiting a home, you know. Now I will say this house right here coming up, maybe it's the next one over. No, it's back there. There's a house back there. There was two daughters. They ended up getting tied into heroin, and they were stealing stuff out of the parents' house. That's the only case that I can remember in 10 years of being down here doing this. But typically they'll get into a house where they've been hanging out. You know, they'll take TVs, gaming systems, jewelry, change, money. You know, we know Cashland and the pawn shops very well, because that's typically where, you know, we go, and they'll take their property to get money to score drugs.
So was that neighbourhood considered the nicest in Ravenna?
It's nicer, yeah. I'd say it's fairly nice. There's some other areas. I mean, like I said, it's a good community overall. A lot of the stuff we see too is, like I said, you have stuff coming into town, you know.
How far up 59 do you patrol? Do you go all the way up to the Walmart? Because I know there's a big,
I can show you.
Big homeless population back behind there.
No, we do not go up to Walmart. It's actually the sheriff's office. But like I said, Ravenna City and Ravenna Township are kind of the same.
Yeah.
So we typically end up, you know, down that way.
But eventually, I'm sure they're either going. The homeless are either coming to Ravenna or Kent.
Right. Yeah.
So that's
absolutely.
like midway.
Absolutely.
Also, it's the Walmart between here and Kent is where the homeless population is.
Yeah, it's like dead center between Ravenna and Kent.
The other thing we see is a lot of Silver Meadows. Silver Meadows traffic and vice versa. Kent PD will see the same. They will see our traffic, depending on where the heroin dealer is that day and what's going on. You know, I mean, if all the dope is over in Silver Meadows, they will see an influx in Ravenna traffic. If all the dope is downtown Ravenna, you'll see an influx in Silver Meadows traffic here. You know, in the south end of Kent too, down by like Franklin and all there.
Are you seeing any spice?
No, we did. We had that gas station down on South Prospect before the bridge, and there was another gas station up here on North Freedom. They were selling spice and bath salts years ago when it was legal, and you could get it, you know, out of the gas stations. And you talk about crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
people, we would have it every night. We'd have people seeing stuff. We had a guy climb the flagpole.
Oh wow.
We had people naked wanting to fight. I mean, we had it all. I mean, we were fighting people left and right. They were in like a psychotic state, and it was insane. I had a guy tell me one night that he'd teach me how to make or grow marijuana. I mean, he looked dead right at me. He's like, "I will teach you how to grow marijuana right now." And I mean, he had been smoking spice. So, I mean, you're sitting there telling a uniformed police officer, "Hey, I'm going to teach you how to make marijuana, buddy." You know, so
I've done these rides in Skid Row in Los Angeles, and I've had people who, homeless, drug dealers, drug users on coke,
right,
you name it, and they say they will never take spice.
Oh, yeah.
That stuff is just nuts.
Oh yeah, we had people taking spice and bath salts, and I mean,
wow.
you talk about nuts. This bar, we are starting to have an influx in heroin usage there and trafficking.
Is that open in the morning?
It's open.
Got it.
Yeah, it's open in the
All the
morning, all the
time.
evening. Yeah.
Yeah.
The guy that previously owned it didn't entertain any of their riffraff. I mean, he really kept a real good eye on it. Now it's a different story.
Does Ravenna have a landlord registration?
You mean like the landlords actually have to register?
Yeah. 70 is one
You know, I don't know. I'd have to look into that. I can't give you a good answer on that one. This is where the bank robbery guy had actually barricaded himself in that middle one there. Yeah, and then he just ran down from Huntington. Another low-income housing, drug usage at times. Not really a hot spot, but occasionally we'll get it there. Some of our known heroin traffickers going back, because I get my mind rolling thinking about stuff. We had 10 shootings from August to January in Ravenna. We had 10 shootings in this small little town. One of them was actually right here, known heroin trafficker out of Kenmore, over on the west side of Akron. I had got into it with another heroin trafficker out of the Kent-Ravenna area. The guy out of Kenmore actually pulled a firearm, and the guy started fleeing down the road here and running this way and made a right, and the guy out of Kenmore was actually shooting. He shot 8 rounds while he was running down the street. These rounds were actually hitting into the wall of the Cimarron Lounge there. So, going back to violent crime from heroin trafficking here, look where you're at. I mean, there's cars, there's people. Now, this was in the evening, but it was Friday, Saturday night where people are out in downtown and stuff. There's foot traffic, vehicle traffic. I mean, look at the intersection, 8 rounds. I mean, that could have hit somebody and killed them,
Stuff's hard when you're trying to bring in businesses down to here.
Absolutely. Scares people to death. I mean, who wants to cut, you hear these Wild West stories where, they're shooting down Main Street. Who wants to come down there and
set up
a business, exactly. Or, you got people dropping over in the bathroom of McDonald's. You want to go get a sandwich there, Years ago, heroin addicts in this place out of Cleveland, they came and tried to do a home invasion. And it actually ended up firing rounds into the car. They were able to fight them off. They tried forcing entry into the back door. The occupants were able to fight them off. They ended up shooting the car up.
404.
And Ravenna PD had gotten there fast enough. I think they got into a chase with them and ended up losing them, but eventually ended up apprehending them and making an arrest.
It's unclear if it's missing some stuff from inside. Anybody wants to see one?
Heroin users in that corner house. I'd go around the block here real quick. Show you a couple houses where we've had problems. Show you another example of a neighborhood problem here. So, do you need me to stop a minute?
No.
Okay. So right here, it's an ongoing issue. People that live in here, heroin addicts, they're bringing in a lot of traffic where other heroin addicts are congregating, and it's kind of becoming like a dope shack. It's becoming like a flop house type of thing. Go around the corner here. problems with narcotics and heroin at this location. So there's 2 houses in the neighborhood.
And that's within 1 block.
1 block.
One thing I have not seen a lot of, though, which is different to a lot of the other towns around, is no lot of lighting.
407.
Known drug trafficker. Heroin, meth, running between Ravenna and Las Vegas.
Wow.
Home invasion, other dealers. Ended up having multiple shooting victims out of there a couple years ago.
So he would steal from other dealers.
Rip them off, yeah. Or cut them short if you had a higher end dealer, which was what this had happened. Guy was a higher end dealer, felt like he got shorted, wasn't getting what he wanted, so kicked in the door of that place where this guy was staying, and like 2 or 3 gunshot victims as a result of it. So you just see in that little block, that street right there, the issues. Come around the corner. Back there, that house, we've had overdoses. It's quieted down.
468. 468.
Oh no, the brick one down. I can take you down there if you want. We've had. I'll turn around here. Had several overdoses there. I'm going to show you another one while we're on the street. This house here. Currently, a heroin addict lives there. This is 412 Conan. His brother had died from heroin. Now you can see right there, nice family having a little yard sale.
404.
One son's dead, the other one is strung out on heroin. Just arrested him a week ago. Openly admits
There
that.
will be a representative from NDS responding. Seeing
Heroin
5 minutes
use.
driving a silver Kia.
Okay, it's clear.
Heroin use right here. Oh, wait, I'm sorry, it's up here. This one right here. Heroin users.
It's 434.
So you can just see in the small area, you know, me just pointing out, driving down, pointing out.
Yeah, it's like little pocket areas here
Right,
and there.
right. And I mean, you drive down this road, you're like, well, this is pretty quiet if you're not, you know,
Right.
involved.
And it's not always like the most rundown house either.
No, not at all. Now, the person that was using heroin, he's currently in prison. So I don't know who's living here now, but we had a lot of heroin activity going on at this location.
Again, I've seen this elsewhere. There's no way you would have a Hummer like that outside that side of style of house.
Right, right.
I mean, there's alarm
Exactly.
bells gone straight away.
Exactly, right.
That and a Mercedes.
Right.
Well, you're probably talking about 80 grand worth of car then.
Absolutely. So now take these houses, and okay, they're heroin addicts or they're dealers. We'll say let's go with the heroin addicts. Take these houses in this neighborhood. Now, you know, you have a car like this with a GPS in it, some change, stuff like that, and you have your vehicle unlocked. You know, that's what they do in the evening is they'll start pulling on car doors and they'll start stealing that stuff. You know, and then you'll have all these theft issues in just this neighborhood. You know, because they need to support their habit. Now, I can tell you because I have relationships with these guys, this person does not have a job. This person down here does not have a job. The person down on Jefferson in the corner does not have a job. So how do you support your habit?
And they just got all day to wander around and try and find things that they could sell or cash.
Now, that's the males. I haven't even brought up the females where we're seeing an influx in prostitution and human trafficking. We're starting to see that on a small scale here too.
So how does the prostitution work in Ravenna?
It just depends. I was trying to find Christy. Christy would be able to enlighten you on how it works. What happens is typically what I know of from talking to females is, you know, they will do sexual favors to a dealer in exchange for narcotics. You know, typically heroin or crystal meth. A lot of, you know, we have a female out here. Her name's Christy. She's very open to talk to me. I was trying to find her. She's usually walking around. They will actually take her down to the Eastwood Motel. I'll take you down there and show you. And they will actually run business with her. She'll do sexual favors for money and then give them to, you know, I mean, you could call them a pimp, or you could label it a, you know, person of dominance over her, you know, that's basically running her life, you know, I mean. And they're keeping her on drugs, and that's all she's really looking for. She has mental health issues. She's actually been convicted of felony possession, sent for treatment, came back clean, and it's, you know, within a few months span, she was back out on heroin.
How long's your shift typically? 8 or 12?
It just depends. You know, we have had, like I said, a shortage in manpower, so typically it's an 8-hour shift. They're kind of restructuring the department. We've all had to work a lot of overtime in the last year because we've had so many people down because of the physical confrontations and stuff that we've been facing. So it's not uncommon to work, you know, come in at 3 in the morning till 3 in the afternoon. So
now, do you guys have a union too, or no?
Yeah, we're unionized. Correct.
I know a couple of the guys over at Kent, and I know they're always talking to me about personnel issues with the union, and you know, there's always stuff.
Absolutely.
That happens, you know.
Absolutely. These gas stations, like you just saw down here, and you saw right here, very not an uncommon thing to have armed robberies. Typically, it's somebody got a drug habit. So this is still Ravenna Township. Start getting out a little bit more rural. I want to take you down to this motel because this is a direct pipeline for heroin and prostitution, which leads into Ravenna. Oh, wow. That'll be good.
So directly where the big population is behind the Walmart.
Well, is there a housing unit back there?
I don't think there's a housing
They're
unit.
just-
I think
that's
it's
where
like
they're
10 city.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I think this white building here on the right, that's where they're going to
Start doing it.
supposed to be setting up a homeless shelter there.
That'll be good.
Yeah.
The trailer parks around here typically carry a lot of drug usage too. All of those are in Ravenna Township though. So like down here, when I was in the detective bureau, almost on a weekly basis for like thefts, burglaries, stuff like that, forgery, bad checks, it was all leading back to drug usage and typically coming out of one of the trailer parks. This is the Eastwood Motel. A lot of heroin trafficking. A lot of heroin use. A lot of prostitution.
This is actually the township, Ravenna Township.
This is Franklin Township.
Franklin.
Yeah. So this is the sheriff's office.
Were they seeing anything in Brady Lake, being that's right over here?
Yeah, Brady Lake's kind of like a pipeline. I haven't kept up with them, but I think they're disbanding their police department.
Yeah, I think they might have already done that.
Typically, the sheriff's office ends up responding. Yeah, it does. I mean, they recently spruced it up, but we see a lot of this. What I've said in here:
Overdoses here.
overdoses, prostitution, heroin trafficking. It's just kind of in between Ravenna and Kent. So.
You see many students from the university in Ravenna who go to Ravenna for drugs?
Not typically, no. Very, very, almost never seldom. So.
4, go ahead.
I haven't heard much for Kent either,
Yeah.
with the university.
Right.
What's the address?
Like I said, the heroin seems to be like jobless. Nobody to identify with in a positive fashion. And low income housing, mental health. Those are like the 4 main groups that I would use as a target for heroin use.
Unless you've got anywhere specific to take it, so I don't want to take any more of your time. It's been fantastic. I think that's been a really good look at what's going on in Ravenna.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming up.
Yeah.
Like I said, the thing I've learned is it's going to take a whole group effort. So.
Yeah.
Now I don't know if anybody's told you, like University Hospital in Ravenna here, their ER is overwhelmed because of heroin influx. So, the court systems are flooded.
Yep.
The jails are flooded. ER's been flooded. So, and even like Kevin Coleman, I mean, it's really taken a toll on the mental health profession. I mean, they're stretched thin because of it. And you have all your resources just kind of getting exhausted out because you have this huge heroin epidemic that's taken over.
doubled up on our deaths from the coroner's office too.
Absolutely. Coroner's office is another one. It's a good point.
I know, talking to Vic, the prosecutor, he was saying the same thing with his caseload is just so overwhelming. There's all the drugs.
Right. There's been talks of adding another judge.
Yeah.
The code 80 is just canceled by the alarm company.
Okay, we'll disregard.
Okay, copy. 1350.
Hey, you're pretty compact with everything. You got this down.
Yeah, really. So do you travel all over the country?
Yeah, I've done this in a lot of cities and actually across the world as well.
Oh, wow.
Different countries with different topics. But
Cool.
with police departments locally, done a lot of work in Akron, Barberton, now Ravenna. I've also done it in New Orleans, a lot in Los Angeles.
Wow.
And then actually related to disasters. So I started this after Hurricane Katrina. I was part of the response to that.
Uh-huh.
And so we started doing that in neighbourhoods in New Orleans. Then several different tornadoes. And other people have taken it out and collected data as well in other cities. Detroit, for example.
Oh, yeah.
Got a
Wow.
lot from Detroit.
Yeah.
Youngstown, we've done a lot in Youngstown.
I started over there.
Well,
In
Youngstown.
Youngstown?
That's a bad city. I mean, in terms
With
of
Youngstown?
No, I went to Walsh University.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I got a baseball scholarship over at Walsh, but I actually started my career over in Youngstown.
Okay.
And got hired full time over here. And I was like, bye-bye, Youngstown.
Yeah.
yeah,
A
there's
friend of
a lot
mine's
of
an
problems in
officer
Youngstown.
over in Hubbard.
Yeah. Well, you've been around.
Yeah, that's right. And then you did work down in Texas, didn't you, with the mosquitoes and
Yeah, Houston with West
mosquito
Nile
surveillance in West Nile? Right.
El Paso as well with dengue. West Nile and dengue. Actually, I forget.
Under 431.
It's always a lot of fun though because it's really interesting to actually just sort of get the experience of what it's like.
1725,
a
take
lot of these are important
47,
topics. If you just
domestic.
read books about them, you never get that sense of
Right.
really what's happening there.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. And there's so many different things that affect all this. I mean, you know, like I said, I mean...
Well, I mean, from what you've been saying, it's actually different to Barberton. I mean, you've got Barberton, they have a problem, but it's a problem where the drugs come in and it's people overdosing who are just locals in the town who are depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Here, you were talking about as you said, a transient population. That Ravenna just is a hub for people coming here, being attracted in for
Right.
a variety of reasons.
Right.
And then the bad stuff happens. So it's a totally different situation between these two towns.
Right.
Which,
Is unique.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'll put all the results. Does your department doing any mapping at all of police?
No,
data?
the chief, we just changed guards, so to speak. So the old chief retired, I want to say 2 months ago. We just got the new chief who's been here 20 years and he was captain and everything. And he really wants to start getting into mapping stuff like this. So
Yeah.
we had that talk this morning when he told me I was going to come out with you fellas. So I know he's very interested in doing stuff like that. So
I'll have to let him know that, but at least in the short term, until you figure things out. I mean, my students can map for you.
yeah, and I think he's very interested in that.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you guys want to come up and say hi real quick, or
Sure.
we can kind of give him the rundown, because I know he was very interested in how the outcome would come out. And I know he was looking at doing mapping stuff. So,
Yeah.
and not just drug activity, but like
Everything.
burglaries, right? You know, so